Thank you. It does work. Welcome, everybody. This is a special joint meeting of the Brantford and Brant County Councils as a consultation for the boundary adjustments discussions that have been going on. Both myself and Mayor Eddy are chairing this meeting, as it's a joint meeting. This is actually, I think, the first time that we've done this that I can remember. I know we've done 3 councils sitting together with 6 nations as well, but I don't know that we've had a public meeting in this way with both councils, so it's exciting. To begin the meeting in the formal part of the process, because this is where we are, I'm going to ask first Lori Wolf, the clerk from the City of Brantford, to call the roll, please.
Councillor Martin? Here. Councillor Antosky? Here. Councillor Van Tilborg? Present. Councillor Carpenter? Here. Councillor McCreary? Yep. Councillor Utley? Here. Councillor Kings? Here. Mayor Friel?
Here. And then for the county, Heather?
Councillor Wheat?
Here.
Councillor Bauma?
Here.
Councillor Simons?
Here.
Councillor Pierce?
Here.
I have regrets from Councillor Cardy and regrets from Councillor Powell. Councillor Chambers?
Here.
Councillor Miller? Councillor Coleman?
Here.
Councillor Gatward?
Present.
And Mayor Eddy?
Okay. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, this is going to take us to the public meeting portion of our event. And so what's going to happen is, we're just going to go over the rules in a second. And then Paul Moore, who's the General Manager for Community Development for the City of Brantford, and Mike Bradley, who's the Deputy CAO and General Manager Operations County of Brant. Is that your whole title? The whole, really, eh? How big's your card? It's a postcard. Are going to make a presentation, and then after that we're going to have comments from the public. So just, so those of you who've been to the meetings before, and a couple of you have been hostile to me about this already, but I'm sticking with it. These are the rules for the meeting this evening. And I have to read the first part of this fully. This public meeting is held in accordance with subsection 173.3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended for the purpose of consulting with the public regarding a restructuring proposal for the City of Brantford and the County of Brant. The order of presenter speakers will be as follows. Staff from the City of Brantford and County of Brant will make a presentation regarding the restructuring proposal. Questions from members of joint councils to staff regarding the presentation. Members of the public wishing to address the joint councils will be asked to come forward to the microphone, state their names and addresses for the clerks for the record, and provide their comments regarding the restructuring proposal. So I believe we've got one microphone there. Is that? We will? Is there just one, or is there a second one?
You have two available.
Okay, thank you. There's one and a backup battery one, just in case. And there can be questions from members of joint councils to the public regarding comments they have made. Decorum at the meetings. Please note that the following rules regarding decorum apply at this joint council meeting. No person shall display any sign, banner, or placard in the meeting room other than the materials that, in the opinion of both co-chairs, are legitimate and necessary audio-visual aids. All persons present in the meeting room shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. And we all know what they are. And all persons addressing the joint council shall speak only to the restructuring proposal for the City of Brantford and the County of Brant, and shall not speak on any other subject. No person shall applaud participants or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. No person shall bring into the meeting room any cellular telephone, pager, wow, this is old, or electronic devices that emit a sound unless such devices are turned off or silenced. So if you do, if you turn off your cell phones, please put them on vibrate or nothing at all. And that would be the end of this part. So if I could introduce Paul Moore and Mike Bradley to come forward and make the presentation. Guys want to stand, or you? Okay. You got that?
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Mayors, members of council, and guests. I'm going to just spend a few minutes and go over the process of the boundary adjustment up until around the middle of February, when the last agreement was considered and approved by the two councils, and then Paul will follow up with information on the process since then. So, first of all, on January 6th, 2016, a Memorandum of Understanding was approved by the two mayors of the City of Brantford and the County of Brant, and that articulated the process and the proposal to adjust the city-county boundary. Two public information sessions were held on the 14th and the 21st of January, just about a couple weeks after that. And those both included morning and afternoon public information sessions where people could come and just ask questions of the council members and staff of the two municipalities, as well as we had evening sessions allowing people to speak and have their concerns answered. County Council reviewed and approved a revised map on the 26th of January, and City Council considered that map and approved it on February 2nd. And that map addressed many of the concerns that were brought forward throughout that public process, and I'll be reviewing that map in a few seconds. On February 16th, both the City and County Council approved a boundary adjustment agreement, which articulated basically the boundary adjustment proposal that would be submitted to the Minister based on the MOU and the consultation that had occurred. So this is the map that was included in the February 16th agreements that were approved by the two councils, and I'll just give you an idea of the changes that this map made to the original map included in the MOU. The first was we added lands. Okay, that doesn't work, Paul. We added lands. Okay. We added lands to the east. Yeah, I still can't see it. I'll just not bother. We added lands to the northeast corner of the original proposal based on requests that came through the public information sessions. As well, on the northwest corner of the area, we added lands as well to be transferred to the city. And then the final piece that we changed to that map, you'll see that dotted line at the bottom of the map. Those were lands in Tootla Heights that we moved from the initial transfer to the what we call the trigger lands. It was proposed that these lands would be transferred to the city at a subsequent date based on the growth of the city, basically the city meeting 80% of the build out of the original lands. And so that's where the map left off on February 16th based on that initial public engagement process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone, mayors, members of councils. So after the agreement had been signed by both councils, it was forwarded on to the staff at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their initial review. That was in February of 2016. On March the 4th, staff from both city and the county got together with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to go through their comments and their concerns that they had raised with the agreement. So there was really three items that there was some issues with. So the province wanted us to continue our consultation with Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations. There was also concern around the compensation that was to be paid. Originally in the agreement, there was a per unit charge of $850 per residential unit and a $3,500 per hectare development charge on employment lands. When the province brought in a new DC Act update earlier this year, it no longer allowed us to accept this kind of a payment, so we needed to look at a different compensation method to address this goal. And finally, the issue of the triggering lands was of concern to the province. Their concern was they needed a drop-dead date of when those lands were actually going to come forward to the city. So we'll go through and I'll explain these as we proceed. So the next step was that city and county staff presented the proposed boundary expansion to Six Nations elected council on February 29th, 2016. And at that meeting, we were directed to meet with Six Nations staff. So that meeting was held on March 22nd. And through that discussion, we were advised that additional lands in Tootla Heights were to be added, or was recommended to be included at the request of Six Nations. And finally, they had also requested that Six Nations be included as a participant in the joint venture areas. We also sent letters to Mississaugas of the New Credit of the First Nation March 24th and April 21st, inviting them to participate in the consultation program. On May the 12th, we heard back from them, and at that time they had advised that they had no concerns with the boundary adjustment. So as a result of completing the consultation with all of the interested parties, following changes are recommended to the proposed boundary adjustment. And I'll get to each of these as we go through them. So additional lands are to be added in the Tootla Heights area as requested by Six Nations of the Grand River. The trigger lands are to be removed from the initial transfer and are to be regulated now through the city's official plan. Six Nations of the Grand River are to be a participant in the joint ventures, and there's a revised compensation method. So in terms of the revised compensation method, we determined that with adding additional lands in Tootla Heights, there's approximately 11,500 dwelling units that could be created in the boundary expansion. So at that $850 charge, it comes out to $9.7 million. The employment, there's 531 net hectares at $3,500 a hectare, 1.8 million. So total compensation, $11.6 million, and that's to be paid to the county over a 10-year period starting in 2018. So that's $1.16 million per year. So that took away the concern that the province had about the new regulations through Bill 73 and the DC Act. In terms of triggering, this one sounds funny. There are trigger lands, but there aren't trigger lands. So everything that you see on the screen is the initial transfer. All the lands will come to the city as of January 1st, 2017. The lands that you see colored are still the trigger lands, and they'll be regulated through official plan policy. So when there's 80% build out in all the gray areas, the colored areas can be brought on for development. The only change is that all of the land comes to the city at the initial transfer, rather than those colored areas being held back and remaining in the county until a fixed date. So the province wanted that fixed date in the agreement. We couldn't give them a fixed date because we don't know the rate of development, whether it's going to happen in 5 years or when it's going to happen in 25 years. So it's the exact same methodology that we had previously, that 80% build out. That'll all come through our official plan and be policy, and we'll monitor it annually and still send the county that annual report on where we're at in terms of build out. And finally, this is the final version of the map that's before both councils this evening that shows the proposed boundary transfer. So in terms of land area, the total gross area is 2,719 hectares, and that equates to 1,684 net hectares. So that's with all the removal of the environmental lands. When you see the boards at the side, we've got that environmental land board again that shows all of the environmental lands plus the buffering that will be removed that is not land to be developed. In terms of breaking it down in the employment and the residential, we have 739 gross hectares for employment, which is 531 net hectares. And in terms of residential, 1,980 gross hectares, which is 1,153 net. So in terms of the additional lands that were requested to be added, let's see, yeah, it's down here, just east of the existing urban boundary settlement at Phelps Road going, there's an unopened road allowance right there. Sorry for being so shaky, but it's along there at Tootla Heights Road as well, just to the south. So at that is the end of the presentation. I'll turn it back over to the mayors. Thank you.
Want to take this? So this is the opportunity for members of council, if you have any questions directly of either Michael or Paul. Okay. Mr. Mayor, this is the opportunity for comments from members of the public. Our mics are coming out as we speak. And if you want to start, you can, whoever wants to speak first, there's your opportunity. Maybe we could say that just in the beginning in particular, we'll try and keep it to 3 to 5 minutes, including questions from members of council, just in case there's a large number of people who wish to speak to this item. And depending on how the evening goes, we can relax some time. So all we'll do is ask if you wish to speak, you can come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the clerks for the record. We're doing 1 set of minutes for this evening. And we can go from there.
Questions?
Comments, questions?
And perhaps I can start it off. I'm here on behalf of the Brantford Home Builders Association.
If I could just get your name.
I will.
For the clerk.
My name is Douglas Stewart. I will keep my comments brief. We will provide to you a written response. That written response is the same, along the same lines of what we provided at the first consultation. On behalf of the association and our over 71 member companies, we are in support of this, and we ask that you proceed as quickly as possible.
Questions from members of council? Okay, anybody else?
In response, absolutely, that's what we're about, is to try to move along. And because of the number of years and decades spent on this particular matter, it is important to move along. That's what it's all about. Was there a question up here? Another question? Go ahead, please.
Ella Haley from Sustainable Brand. We have a petition here. We will send it by email to the clerks. And we have signatures here, pages of signatures, calling for a moratorium on the Brantford-Brant mega sprawl deal. Whereas Brantford and Brant County Councils are proposing to annex 6,718 acres of mostly prime farmland from the north, northeast, and south of Brant County in exchange for another 2,157 acres of joint sprawl development in Cairnsville and the airport areas, a total of 8,875 acres of development land. We are concerned about the financial burden that this places on ratepayers and the loss of farmland, and the province's recommendation that cities should grow up rather than out, which then reduces the need for boundary expansions. We hereby call for a moratorium on boundary negotiations until the province has completed its mapping of the natural heritage and agricultural systems, and the city and the county have updated their official plans to include this mapping information.
And the question is?
I'm presenting the petition to let you know that a lot of ratepayers in the city and the county are unhappy.
Have you presented this, made this presentation to our provincial government or some department?
We've sent 2,500 names to the provincial government. We've met with Ted McMeekin. We're calling for a moratorium on the mega sprawl.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from members of council? Okay. Thank you, Al. Come on down. Yep. Okay, well, you might be second now.
Rick Carter, 39 Davern Road. I have a question for Mayor Friel and Mayor Eddy. Are you familiar with Joni Mitchell's song, Big Yellow Taxi? Mayor Friel? Or Mayor Eddy?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
Are you familiar with Joni Mitchell's song, Big Yellow Taxi? And part of it says, they paved paradise and they put up a parking lot. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And that's exactly what my opinion and the opinion of many people is, that you won't know what you've got until you've paved it over, that you're trying to do. The origin of the word suicide comes from the Latin words sui, one's own self, and cida, killing. The definition of political suicide is a concept by which a politician loses widespread support and confidence from the voting public by proposing actions that are seen as unfavorable or that might threaten the status quo. A politician who is seen as having committed political suicide might be forced to resign from external public pressure or will probably be voted out of office in the next election. Mayor Friel, on 2 occasions you have ran for mayor and lost the election. You have never had the support of 50% of the electorate, yet your actions your taxes continue to increase every year. A vast majority of the people that I've spoken to whose property is being annexed into the city of Brantford say that they will never vote for Chris Friel for mayor. In fact, one said that she would sooner vote for Attila the Hun than Chris Friel. The course you're steering could cost you the next election. Those people who will benefit the most from the annexation, developers and builders, represent very few votes relative to the number of the angry people in the city of Brantford and the proposed annexation area. Do you really think, Mr. Friel, that your actions will enhance your being elected again?
I'm sorry, but one of the things was that we're talking about the restructuring agreement, not the individuals who are involved in this process. So if you could get back to the restructuring agreement, that would be great.
Well, I think it's the individuals that are driving it. Okay, are you aware of the 2 different petitions? There is a second petition going around, and that petition is talking about the increase of taxes in the city. Taxes have gone up about 50% in the last 10 years. People in the city are saying, what's going on? And prime farmland's being taken out of production in order to build new houses. People are very unhappy. In less than 1 week, over 500 people have signed the 2 petitions. The goal is to present them to the government, the petitions, with over 2,000 signatures. That answers your question that you asked of Ella. It is our goal to present it to the government. Mr. Friel, Mayor Friel, do you know the cost to service the area and where the money is going to come from? There's been spoken about transferring money to the county, but what about all the services that are being brought in, have to be brought in?
That question's a valid question. Do you want to save them up until the end, or do you want to, because your time's going to run up because we already got 2 people behind you?
Well, I asked you if you know. If you're saying you know, then where will the answer come from?
We actually have a master servicing plan. We review as all of our development when we go forward. Development growth will pay for growth as they move forward. The developers will pay through development charges and other fees to be able to develop servicing in all of the adjacent areas.
Okay. As I say, people are unhappy with proposed potential increase in taxes. When I spoke at a city council meeting, Councillor Greg Martin asked me what side of the river Tootla Heights was on. If he can't be bothered doing his homework to find out where the area that is being proposed for annexation under the MOU, it is most likely that he doesn't have a clue how much money it is going to cost to service the new areas and where the money will come from.
Can we get away from the personal attacks?
That wasn't a personal attack. I was stating a fact that's on record.
If we could get away
That's not an attack, but it's on record.
Attacks and get to the heart of the matter. If you have a question or a comment specific to the restructuring and not the individuals, please proceed.
Okay, but something that's on record at city council meeting, and I repeat it, I don't understand how that's an attack.
It's the way it's being structured. I mean, you called me Attila the Hun. Keep moving on if you have a
I
question.
did not call you Attila the Hun.
Look, I'm not debating it. Would you have a question or a comment that you'd like to proceed with?
Okay, but you falsely accused me, and I'm not debating that either. Okay. Has there been any action on the riverbank? When I inquired 3 or 4 months ago, they said that the study that was being done would be released in late spring. It is now summer.
It's your study, isn't it?
Study. It's presently being studied, and I'd like to point out to you and all citizens that are present, and thank you for coming out on this beautiful June night when there are other things you might be doing and enjoying. Me, I like meetings, so it's fine. But I would want to point out to you that local councils, municipal councils, do not initiate boundary transfers. The legislation belongs to the province. In our case, the province of Ontario passed places to grow legislation that sets out how we shall grow, how much, and therefore creates the need for land transfer. That came to us, and as councils, being legitimately elected councils to meet the needs, we sat down to negotiate a solution. This is what we've negotiated. Thank you.
So you said the riverbank is being studied, but I was told...
Yes, sir, and I know that.
We'll
be having an open house very soon. We'll invite you to it.
Thank you, but why are we rushing to get the annex MOU settled before we know the results of the riverbank?
If you think 13 and a half years of negotiation, meeting after meeting after meeting, is rushing, I don't agree.
Well, I think having a public meeting one night and voting the next night is rushing. That's my opinion, and it's not argumentative, it's an opinion.
Okay.
Okay. What about the widening of the roads and the traffic? Already people are complaining that the traffic in south of Brantford on Phelps Road and at Cockshut Road and Phelps Road is a nightmare for many people. 5 minutes to get through the lights there on their way home. Is there any plans to widen the road, widen the bridge?
We have a master transportation plan in the city of Brantford that's ongoing, and we're actually just in the process of approving an individual who's going to be implementing it, because that's not the only areas where transportation or traffic issues are becoming a concern. As we have more and more people coming in and out, we're doing EAs for the BSAR South, the BSAR North. We're starting that process. We're looking at alternatives that will also manage the traffic that's coming out of the southwest. We're looking at alternatives that can use it's County Road 16, I believe. We're looking at alternatives that can also go out towards the airport. So not only are we totally aware of that, but we've been working on it for a number of years to make those determinations in which is the best form. Boundary adjustment makes a decision about how we deal with transportation-related issues.
Okay, and my comment, and it's not argumentative, it's a comment, is, okay, we're going to vote to go ahead, and we're still trying to figure out how we're going to do it. That's my take on what you said.
But that's how we do things. You can't make a decision or judge until you have the studies done and an understanding of what the development process is going to be like. It'd be bad business to proceed in any other form. So, ma'am?
Good evening, it's Sue Draper. I'm a citizen here in Brantford. I have a couple of different questions having arisen from some of the research that I was doing. One of them is to your legal team, specifically because under the Municipal Act, which I believe actually trumps the Places to Grow Act, it specifically says that the Brantford Annexation Act says that the area shall be designated by the county in all of its official plans and subsequent amendments to ensure the preservation of farmland and the provision of the water supply as related to agricultural mineral resource extraction. I'd like to know if that is part of the municipal act, how does your legal team plan to amend that in such a way that it can actually go forward with this annexation? If it's specifically prohibited under the municipal act, I'd like to know how that's done.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayors. The next paragraph of that municipal act says that the land use designations can be changed subject to agreement between the county and the city, and that's exactly what this boundary negotiation would be doing.
As long as the city of Brantford and the county of Brant agree. Now, that was all done prior to the amendments to the Indian Act as well, so I'm interested in what kind of consultation you've got going on there so that all three happen. And I don't want to open that up. I know that's a pretty difficult area for a lot of people, but that brings to mind what my friend was saying about the riverbank. And the river is, as you know, a federally designated heritage site. So I'd like to know if actually, since it's designated under the federal government, if it's been consulted on its approval of this as well.
I don't believe that the federal government is involved in any approval at this level. They have no relationship.
Well, unfortunately, they do have a relationship.
They have no relationship with boundary adjustment. The river itself is not being directly impacted other than through when we have either drawing from or returning to, which is solved under or resolved under other issues related or done through public works. We deal with the federal government whenever we have to have a river crossing. If we've done the bridge, we did the Northwest was the last time that we did it, and they're brought in to consult specifically when dealing with the bed of the river or the immediate adjacent area.
I'm actually glad you brought up the Northwest because if I'm reading this correctly, you're going to be needing to make some adjustments to the water crossings such as the Northwest, and I understand the Northwest agreement was also done in conjunction as a temporary interim agreement in 1997, contingent on a number of different factors with the Six Nations, and I'd like to know if they've been involved in the change of that contract at all.
No, that agreement is actually specific to the crossing of the river, and all of the clauses, any part of that agreement, because I was involved in negotiating it, we've managed or lived up to. There is no requirement to go back to change anything. If in fact the Northwest pedestrian bridge was built over capacity, so it has the opportunity, if any lines or anything needed to be added, it was done. There was a reservoir that was added in years afterwards, right at the corner of Kramer's Way, in that area, so that work's been done afterwards, and the agreement itself, the 97 agreement, is we've lived up to every clause in it.
When I attended your meeting in St. George in, I believe it was February, might have been April last year, one of the things that your planner had to say was that it believed that Brantford has overestimated the needs of its growth by approximately 3,000 hectares, and that it's underutilizing its brown fields as well as the available land within the city of Brantford, and that it should actually be done before that excess is done. How do you plan to address the fact that your planner says that
I have no idea where that statement's coming from. We've accounted for every infill, every brownfield, every piece of property possible within the city of Brantford. It was included, and this was repeated numerous times, it was included in every aspect of this agreement. We have very specific density agreements, which we've put in place since then. With our intensification corridors, we have done brownfields. In fact, we're still remain leaders in brownfields and how we're managing or dealing with them, and gray fields, as a matter of fact. And I'm not sure which planner would have said we overestimated by 3,000, but our general manager of planning is shaking his head going, I have no idea where that came from.
Actually,
and I've never heard that before.
Michael Bradley, your general manager of corporate services. It was done by Bill Green of the GSP Group. He sent a letter to Michael Bradley April the 10th, which was a peer review of the land intensification project that you were planning, and strongly, he says in several places, disagrees with the city's assumption of how it's meeting the PPS, the provincial policy statement, and I note that that was done actually before the provincial policy statement put in its really strict use and protection of Class 1 farmland.
Those were,
So in answer to your question as to where that came from, that's where that came from.
Okay,
is
so
the County of Brant.
that's not our planner. That was somebody who was doing, in the course of our testy part of our negotiations, that was our dueling planners. So when we were negotiating and things weren't going well, we were trying to get to the agreement. They were saying you've overestimated. We've said you underestimated. We came to a compromise position in the meantime. We peer reviewed that item, and our peer review is actually the basis which disputed a lot of that, and our peer review is the basis of this agreement.
Well, if I understand correctly, a peer review takes your planner's information and it takes the county's planner's information. And if the peer reviewer disagrees with it, then that's not actually taking one side or the other, it's doing
But
an
that's
objective.
this is a negotiating process, so that was a step that we went through, and we've done a number of stages of negotiation after that point. The lands that we've arrived on are the lands that we originally came through, which were based on specific needs. It's done by science, the numbers are there, it's hard to refute it.
I don't think you're understanding my question. My point is that your peer reviewer strongly disagrees with a number of points there. I'd like to know how you're going to address that.
No, we peer reviewed that review, and our peer reviewer took out and said, quite frankly, we don't agree with this.
So
This was done at an early stage. In fact, it would have been 2011-ish when that work was done.
This
and
is
that
actually
was an early part of the
2014,
negotiation.
last April. This is
That was the
2014
reports that
April.
were still coming back when we were going through. You might have pulled it out, but the numbers that we're working at
No,
are the numbers
I didn't
that
actually
both
pull
the
it out.
city
As I stated, it
and
was
the
presented
county,
at Mayor Eddy's meeting.
both the city and the county have agreed to the numbers based on both of our planning expertise.
Right, okay. I'd also like to know, the definition of a green belt is a specific area that is designed to protect agricultural and green lands around an urban area. The green ribbon, as you call it, because it's not called a green belt, there's already a green ribbon that's been established around the city of Brantford. It was done in 1980 when you did the original annexation, and as the Municipal Act says, it was there specifically designed to protect that property. If that was a green ribbon as opposed to a green belt, and it follows under the same basic identification as the green belt, can you explain to me why it is that the green ribbon is apparently less significant?
The green belt no longer exists. In fact, the Brantford-Brant Annexation Act from 1980, although it was in the municipal code, no longer stands as it was, what you're reading. The green belt itself, let me finish. The green belt itself was not done to protect farmland. The green belt was designed specifically to not allow development on the city's border from the county, which was at that point Brantford Township. So it was not done to protect farmland, it was done to protect development on the city's border. We actually have a case that's been going on for a while, which related to the, I think it was the Hopewell lands, which related to that, where there was a development without our discussion on the border, and we went through an OMB challenge based on that. That is why the green belt was in place, not to protect farmland. It never was, and it was never been articulated that way. It's only ever been to stop development on the city of Brantford's borders.
But the Municipal Act actually does say it's designed to protect the agricultural farmland, and unfortunately, that's actually the 2015 Municipal Act. It's not the one from 1980. So saying that it's an outdated legislation, I'm afraid, is a little inaccurate.
I'm absolutely not inaccurate. I hate to tell you that, but it is designed, and it always was from the beginning of this, that there would be no board or no development on our borders. And I mean, we've had an OMB challenge within the last 2 or 3 years based on that exact point.
And it was initiated for the life of that agreement, which was 27 and a half years. So that's long gone.
Not according to the Act, but I will bow to your counsel. Thank you very much.
Come on down.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Brantford. My name's David Hugman, Mayor's Council members. I have a couple of questions, and it's on the cost-benefit analysis that is probably being done. And in particular, some of these questions would be best answered by any provincial, is there a provincial representative here?
It's our meeting, so we're good.
I'm sorry?
No, it's our meeting, so it's good. We will be
Okay,
able to manage it.
so if I got this straight, we pay, and I'm a Brantfordian living on Knightswood Crescent, we pay our neighbors in Brant County $11,633,000 so that developers can build 11,500 homes, as well as industrial properties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thanks. How long do you estimate it'll take to build those 11,500 homes? What do we estimate in our cost-benefit analysis?
It's impossible to be able to gauge it based on, because of so many other factors outside of it, but we have a 2043 target that we have to be able to meet towards. We're 2 to 3 years, and then probably in some areas 5 to 7 years before you could see servicing or development. So you make the analysis over that time frame, and because we're a municipality, and municipalities are traditionally patient money, which is in a cost-benefit analysis means that we can wait for the development over a longer period of time to see it, have it happen, which is one of the reasons that we do, and most municipalities now are moving into doing industrial land, because we are patient money, whereas, and we are more flexible in being able to do those deals, whereas they found in other areas where industrial developers struggle, they need to be able to get the money in exactly the way that it is. They have to have it done in a certain way. It's not always necessarily what's best for the development. So we do both. The industrial and residential will grow out as the need arises, as the development happens. Another good example would be Empire Homes, which had a target of a shorter period of time, but because of the number of homes that they're selling, has sped up that process and well beyond or well ahead of where they thought they were going to ultimately be.
So when planning, do we have kind of an over and under, a guesstimate? You know, is it 20 years? Are we basing our numbers on 20 years, or do we just not have a number to base our financials on? We must have
2043
2043
is the places to grow. Sorry, 2041, you're right. 2041 is the places to grow legislation.
Established by the province of Ontario.
Right. So in 2041, we are hoping to have 11,500 houses built, or units built up there or around the city.
Planning. We're planning.
We're planning for that, correct? So when that occurs, or if that occurs, what will be our increased revenue given today's tax rates or mill rates? How much money can we expect to get in the city of Brantford in terms of new revenue?
It'd be almost impossible to gauge based on the number of homes, at what point they're at, tax rate, mill rates, any other issues that might be coming along on a provincial level. You could ballpark it, but it wouldn't be a number that would be at all accurate to build on.
Because the tax department told me that it was roughly $47 million.
It's going to be, and we've had those numbers before, but it's going to be mill rates, et cetera. What you're going to come at, he's doing it from analysis of if it grows at this amount, if it grows at that amount, or this is what it would be based on the numbers today. And we know that, but all those numbers have been presented in other forms throughout this process.
Well, I don't know them, and that's why I'm here asking. What does it cost in terms of city services that are being supplied right now to a household here in Brantford? Do we have a number on that? Do we have an average number in terms of the services? Garbage, police, fire, snow removal. Is there a number on that in our budget? We say services cost each unit, and then we could extrapolate how much that's going to cost for 11,500 new houses?
Did we... So is there going to be a point to this? Just because...
No, I'm asking these questions because I don't want my taxes going up. Yeah, that's the point. I don't want my tax... I do not want to subsidize developers through my taxes.
Development charges, growth pays for growth as it moves along.
Why are we paying $11 million?
You know, we've already had this discussion earlier today.
Why are we paying $11 million if growth pays for growth?
Because the province would not allow us.
I understand that. That's why I
to use development charges, so we have gone to another source to be able to pay that off.
What's the other source?
From this point on, Growth pays for growth,
Fair enough.
development pays for development. That's the way that we do it.
And what's the other source? Where's the 11 million coming from?
And we're going to more than likely take it out of casino funding, but that decision hasn't been made yet.
Fair enough. That's what I understand. So as it stands, we're paying the county $11 million. Growth is not paying for growth. And we don't know our infrastructure costs. We don't know what, we haven't extrapolated mill rates. We haven't done a lot of the costing of this whole thing. We do know one thing. We know that there's a group of developers and builders who will make a lot of money on 11,500 homes. And I'm probably going to be stuck paying for that subsidy is what I'm saying.
And interesting that there's also going to be millions of dollars coming in. There's also going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in product coming in the home building industry, and thousands and tens of thousands of jobs going to be coming along with it, where people can buy houses to live and continue to do that process. It is not just an approach that deals only with what the corporation of the City of Brantford or the County of Brant is doing. We are creating the environment where business succeeds. That is what we do.
We're creating a new Brampton is what we're doing. We're creating a new Milton is what we're doing, and I disagree with that. Thanks for your time.
Next.
Hi, I arrived a little late, so I apologize if I ask anything that's already been covered. I don't think so, but first a couple of clarification questions. First from Mayor Friel. In terms of the Tutela Heights parcel, the large woodlot that's there, I just wonder if you could comment on what the status of that will be going forward.
If you look at, and it's not going to be that easy to do, and I don't think...
I've seen the maps.
Yeah, so if you look at those maps, but the green that's in there at both the top and the bottom, so it's three categories. There's the naturally sensitive areas, I can't remember what the term is, yeah. There's the woodlot, and then there's our buffer zone. Those areas that are in there in that form will come out of any development potential. So there's the woodlot is there's the natural area around it, and then we apply on behalf of the City of Brantford a 30-meter buffer strip around the rest of it. So the woodlot stays. I think there's a secondary smaller woodlot. That's had a good conversation with a gentleman this afternoon who grew up in that woodlot, and there's a secondary one, but I think that one is also in that mapping protected.
So that means, I just want to be clear, so the 30-meter buffer, you can't build, does that mean you can't build, like a property line can't be, and that's a 30-meter, or you can't build an actual structure?
Inside the 30 meters?
Yeah, or so I guess the way to put it would be, so at the edge of the 30 meters, can they build a house there and then the property line comes right up to the forest?
No. Okay. No. I mean, the property line could come up to the 30 meters. And also, in some cases, in that one, that's a general view of it. There are going to be some areas where it's more environmentally sensitive. And we've just had an OMB case where that area was widened even more. So that, more than likely, will, once we get into it and we do the plan of subdivision, any other issues that go along with it, we'll probably see some areas where the buffer strip will become even bigger than that.
Okay. And I guess the only other, it's related, I guess I'm just trying to get you to answer the same question twice, but given what happened with the woodlot on Rest Acres Road up toward Paris, my understanding, I only read in the media, I suppose, but they applied for some sort of variance or whatever to allow to be able to cut down a significant portion of that. Is that allowed with this woodlot?
When it comes into the city, it won't be. We actually have woodlot protection legislation. I don't know exactly what it's called, Paul. Maybe you can... Woodlot
bylaw.
Okay, well then I was pretty close.
Fair enough.
We're not really creative in municipal government. It's woodlot something or other, but yes, I don't know anything about the Rest Acres is the county issue. I'm not sure what that was, but in our case, those lands that are environmentally sensitive, it's honestly in planning and developing, it's just easier to create large strips away and just protect the area. You don't get into the fights, you don't end up in the OMB, you're just very conscious of it. And that's what we've done within the City of Brantford. We've done a lot of that in the last number of years.
The other second quick question, then I just have one more after that, is I think I know the answers to this, but it's just a bit confusing with the multiple maps, and I'm just not sure, like even that one on the right-hand side there, if it's not up, it's still says trigger lands. And my understanding, there are no trigger lands, right?
Well, we did have that in the presentation, but just so you understand, we're going to keep the trigger lands in because we're not going to need all of that land immediately as it develops. So the trigger lands have stayed in. It'll be part of our official plan. So the same triggering mechanism will apply. We're 80% built out, et cetera. Then those lands will come into development. They're already going to be in the city. And it'll give us a better opportunity to do full planning over the area. We'll have a better idea of it so people aren't making decisions that they shouldn't be in those lands leading up to it. But we'll have the opportunity with the trigger lands, when the official plan hits, then those lands come in. Now, we also did have in the original agreement, and it still applied, that if we got an industrial user that was large and we needed that parcel of land, it can come in sooner based on what that particular need was.
So it could go industrial? I thought it's residential.
There's the blue area on the western side of that is industrial.
I understand.
But that was, we don't envision that because of the nature of that land, and there's not really emergency residential stuff. So you're not going to see that same kind of application to it. So the trigger will only come in, it'll be part of the agreement, but it'll be part of our official plan. And then ultimately, when it hits, that trigger will be our official plan. It'll be an agreement as part of this.
Okay, and then just a sort of final question and pitch, I guess, which is, I truly don't understand the expansion of the Tutela parcel. Like, this is obviously just the most recent change. I'm not sure if there are any other changes in the north, but the fact that we've now gone from sort of the west side and now the parcel's been expanded to virtually, the entire Tutela Phelps Road block, almost all of that extra land is zoned agricultural. And, I guess I understand at some level, or, it's one thing to transfer lands from the county to the city if it's deemed, by both councils to be in the public interest. Like and that's, these are all debatable things, as everyone here is, making the point. But I guess what I don't understand is why this parcel is being expanded when it truly, the land wasn't in the original proposals, so it doesn't seem like it's needed by, to meet the development needs of the city. Please let me finish. And then it really seems to be, instead of a kind of, the private interest of the local residents having our interest getting trumped by the public interest, again, that's sort of one thing, but to have it get trumped by the private interest of a non-local developer, I truly don't understand that. And just to sort of be clear, like, it just genuinely seems kind of unfair that they're sort of getting almost, at least in relation to this parcel of land, almost everything they want. In terms of fairness, when we bought this land, like, my wife came here from Australia, I got out of the military, we moved out here, we brought our kids. We bought this land in the knowledge it was zoned agricultural, right? And that it was, provincial policy that it wouldn't get developed. We had a reasonable expectation this would not be subject to development. When Walton bought the land, these are smart people, they also knew that they were buying land that was zoned agricultural and that the provincial legislation is what it is. And I mean, this expectation has been reinforced over and over that development would not occur. Like, they have no reasonable sort of expectation that land would be developed. And then suddenly, I mean, this expectation for all of us has even been reinforced extremely recently. I'm probably not allowed to play a video, but I have it here from 3 months ago. I won't play it, right? But Mayor Eddy, you yourself said, and I can play the video if anybody wants to hear it, that Walton would be crazy to think they could develop this land. You didn't understand why they bought it with the intent of development, because it was zoned agricultural and it would not be developed. Yet here we are, and it just seems incredibly unfair. The land is not necessary, otherwise, to absolutely meet the city's needs, otherwise it would have been in the original proposals. And it's not about, again, public interest versus private interest, okay, but this is now private versus private. And people who live here, who have a reasonable expectation based on the zoning and the provincial laws and everything else, versus a non-local developer who, has thrown some money around the county, what reasonable expectation do they have that they should be allowed to develop that to trump, our local interest? Again, it's not about meeting the city's needs. It just really doesn't seem fair.
Please.
And that is still the case. That is still the case. Lands that's designated agriculture in the county is protected by the province. What we're dealing with here is a different act. A provincial act, Places to Grow, that said to the city council, you shall grow. And they said to the county, you shall grow. And we were allowed to change designations. But certainly the land that's designated agriculture and stays in the county is protected. But this is a different matter entirely. This is a different act that provides and demands and directs growth. And we're growing. There's no doubt about it. And you've seen this happen in all around us. What happened to the county of Carleton? It was added to the city of Ottawa by the province, the whole county. What happened to Wentworth County? The whole county was added to the city of Hamilton. And that means it changes. Did you not hear about the 660 hectares of farmland near Mount Hope Airport that went through an OMB hearing because it's in the city of Hamilton and designated for growth? There are acts that deal with this. And here we are, creatures of the province. And there's a lot of things you won't like or understand because there are provincial acts that govern us. And it's as simple as that. And I've said that over.
I just want to, because you did miss the beginning of the meeting, this was one of the slides that was put up. We went and did public consultation, or we went and did a consultation in Six Nations down in their elected council.
But we know that money is coming from Walton. I mean, we all know that.
But this is where, so this is where it came from. So regardless of Six Nations' relationship with Walton is Six Nations' relationship with Walton. When we went down, the province said we had to go down and consult. We went down and consulted. We went into their council chambers in an open meeting. All of their council were there. We went through and made the presentation. It was repeated to us by almost every member of council around the table that they were looking at. I believe it was phase 3 and 4. Why wasn't phase 3 and 4 in? Why wasn't phase 3 and 4 in? Why wasn't phase 3 and 4 in? That was repeated to us numerous times. So this was the agreement. So we went to Six Nations, their staff met with our staff. They came back and said, we would like to see this land to the east of Tula Heights involved in that process. Under the request of Six Nations, after our direction from the province of Ontario, we agreed to do that.
But again, it's clearly not needed by the city because it's not in the first proposal. So it's now one private interest against another. And Mayor Andy,
it's actually not. It's our consultation with Six Nations as elected. That's what we were required to do, and that is what Six Nations Council asked
if that's the
us
case,
to do.
then,
and many of the people from Tula Heights said, have you talked to them yet? Have you talked to them? Talk to them. So we did.
Then Mayor Eddie, why would you say that this land was not going to be, I specifically asked you about the Tula Heights land that was zoned agricultural, and you said it was not going to be developed.
If it stays in the county, it's agriculture, it stays agriculture. Simple as. If it's transferred.
These are your own words.
But when it comes into the city, the land use will change.
Walton was so stupid to.
So we do have other speakers too, if you are done with your questioning.
Anyway, but I just hope the councils will take this into account. It just truly seems all sided toward Walton and completely unsided toward the local residents.
Next, please, just to repeat, and I know that you're supportive, but the reason that we ask not for applause is because not everybody shares the same opinions, and it becomes intimidating for individuals who want to come up and say something that is opposite. And that's why we ask not to have public displays in the consultation. Mr. Starkey?
Mr. Friel. Please don't applaud and don't throw things either, okay? I've downloaded a lot of stuff, and I'll try to stick to the information that's been provided to city and county residents online. In the agreement 2.0.4, that's the recognition of provincial legislation. And the only piece of legislation you cite is the Places to Grow Act 2005. Now that's in keeping with the idea that this is something that started 13 and a half years ago. But that's more than a decade ago. And a lot has happened in the meantime. We now have provincial policy statements that were renewed and updated in 2014. As we speak, the province is undertaking, under the leadership of David Crombie, started last year, a review of places to grow and the Greenbelt. And I'm just curious why the 2005 documents, the only ones that cited, I think I was around then. And I'm going to try to stay current. So you've mentioned the places to grow targets, and from the city's website downloaded at 10 after 5, you talk about the 2005 places to grow. If the people are still here from the Home Builders Association, take heart. I'll read directly from the city's website. The province's growth plan targets for Brantford to include 163,000 people and 79,000 jobs by 2041, as well as a minimum 40% increase in residential development annually beginning in 2016. I don't know how a city grows that fast. Like, has gold been discovered somewhere? 40%, a minimum 40% increase in residential development annually beginning this year. How does the city do that?
Mr. Moore?
Thank you. Just to clarify, sorry, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a planner. The reference...
Planners used to be good people.
The reference to the 2005, that's the growth, that's the Places to Grow Act.
Yeah.
So the growth plan came out of the Growth Plan Act. So they're two different documents.
But
okay?
do you conceive what a 40% increase in residential growth is?
It's not a 40% increase, it's 40% of all new residential development shall occur within the city's built boundary, which we have been achieving over the last couple of years.
That's not what this says.
Well,
it says, as well as a minimum 40% increase in residential development annually beginning 2016.
Okay. That, I don't know where you got that from.
I got it from the city's website.
Okay,
I even did a screen snip so you can come and read it for yourself.
That's inaccurate. The growth plan and our official plan, it's 40% of all new residential development.
So it's inaccurate. 13 and a half years in the making.
I'm sorry?
13 and a half years in the making.
No, I think what he's saying is inaccurate is the line that you're reading. The 40% is not accurate to what you were projecting it to as to what is actually the law or practice.
But this is the information provided by the City of Brantford to the city and people in the city.
Well, we'll correct that. That's an inaccurate quote.
Okay. 13 and a half years in the making, and you're going to approve this tomorrow night, and your information's inaccurate. May I continue?
Actually, I'm sorry, that's not accurate at all. All of this information, we've used that 40% within our built space. It's part of our science. It's part of the design, everything. One line, Mr. Starkey, out of a report does not completely obliterate official plans, practices, etc.
I'm reading the information, Mr. Mayor, that you have authorized be provided to the public, and it's inaccurate. It's inaccurate. Does anyone here speak English who could read this for me? Looking at clause 2.12, retroactive tax adjustments. I'm sticking with the script. The parties acknowledge that the basis of some payments made pursuant to Article 12 of this agreement may be altered by retroactive tax adjustments. Article 12 refers to ward boundaries. Why are retroactive tax adjustments contingent on changing ward boundaries?
Mr. Ray or Mr. Moore?
We're looking 13 and a half years in the making.
Unfortunately, our city solicitor, who's done most of this work, just had surgery and is unable to talk, so isn't able to be with us. He would be the best person to actually answer that question.
I think if I can propose an amendment, you actually mean Article 13 rather than Article 12. But what do I know? I just read this online.
Are we typoing the agreement, or are we?
Excuse me, this is an agreement that you're going to vote on and approve tomorrow night.
I get that.
All right, and it's wrong. And your statistics are wrong. And yet you insist on plowing ahead, even though the document you were all going to approve tomorrow night, which is wrong, you were going to approve something that was wrong. Now, I, as a consultant, can send you a bill for this typographical checking if you like. All right, if I can continue. The mayor did indicate that that agricultural land that's protected, when it comes into the city, 5.02 secondary planning process, everything in the county that is designated agricultural will become urban under the city's definitions. So all the protections that are there when the land resides in the county evaporate upon annexation.
That's what I said.
Yep. That's what I said you said. City implementation costs. The city is going to pay all of the county's costs, and there's no upset limit. There is no upset limit. Oh, I didn't give my information. John Starkey, 506 Colburn Street, Brantford, 2 Malcolm Street, Oakland. I have others at a disadvantage. I have 4 of my councillors to represent me. So there is no upset limit to the county's costs as long as they can be shown to be reasonable. Costs to the city. The boundary of the new city will be on the outside edge of all the boundary roads. So the city is responsible. The city now gains all of this new asphalt. And the city's responsible for maintaining, plowing, repairing, and the county is relieved of all that responsibility. My county councillors should be smiling at these.
And as at the present time, all the boundary roads are under the jurisdiction of the county, paid 100% by county taxpayers. And who travels them?
Sure, I'm commending the county on their savvy bargaining skills. Tax grandfathering, just to understand again the costs to the municipal taxpayers. So all of the annexed lands that come into the city their base taxation rate will be the taxation rate established this year, if the annexation happens January 1. Is that right? And generally speaking, county tax rates are 30% lower than the city. And those rates will be grandfathered in because the people in the county will pay the increase in taxes that the city taxpayers pay, but their base rate will be 30% lower. So those lands will continue to be subsidized by the city. 14.01, phase out of county taxes. So even though the county no longer has all this land, the county will continue to get tax payments. So I have a question. What is the dollar value of taxes on the land that is coming into the city? What's the dollar value of the taxes on that land?
Bradley will answer.
Currently?
Currently, this year. Your budgets have been passed. You know what the tax value is.
Mr. Telfer? Actually, John, this is going to be your last question, so we're at 10 minutes. Just want to let some more people. You can come back up again.
Okay.
Is this on?
You can lift that up, Pat. You don't have to. There you go.
I'll turn it around this way. I'm Pat Telfer. I'm the tax collector with the city. So according to the information I got from the county, the taxes being paid on those lands coming in is $1.7 million.
Okay, $1.7 million.
Correct.
And I calculated your sliding scale, so in 10 years' time, in the 11th year, there will be no payments made to the county.
It'll be reduced to 10% per year until zero.
So we take that 1.7 million, and to figure out the liability to the municipality, we multiply, well, the bonus to the county is 550% return on that 1.7 million. So you have to multiply by 5. The liability is a factor of 5.5.
Correct.
So whatever...
over the course of the 10 years, it's $10.3 million.
$10.3 million on top of the 11 million.
Correct.
So that's a $21 million payment to the county.
Correct.
Right? But the county bears no responsibility for providing services to that land anymore.
That's not my question, but...
Okay, I'll come back with my other questions.
Okay. Anybody else wish to come and speak? Comment, question?
I'll be a little briefer. Terry Churchill, 369 Paris Road. Not sure if you can answer this or not. My property right now is designated as the woodlot. I have a residential house on it, and it's also going to be commercial land. Where does that lead me down the road? I'm
not sure that I could answer specifically.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer that at this point, but
I think more than likely we could get Mr. Moore or one of our planners who are here. We can get you right afterwards
okay.
and be able to
All
do
right.
that for you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Just be quick.
Okay.
Adam asked a question about the woodlot there, and I have a little story here. A number of years ago, my late father, who had lived next door to his father, when my grandfather was about 96, he passed away, and the land was sold, the property was sold. The person who purchased it went for a building permit for my grandfather's former lot, side lot, and my father opposed it. Went to a city meeting. He opposed it based on trees on the property, and he was assured that none of the trees would be cut down. 100% assurance. And so that was the end of that. The building permit was issued. The foundation was poured. And within a week, all the trees were cut down. And Adam, I refer a lot of this as weasel words that they give you. It's our intention, and then they do the exact opposite. And to carry on with the big yellow taxi, Joni Mitchell said they took all the trees and put them in a tree museum and charged $1.50 just to see them. Good luck with your woodlot. And the petition will be at the back when people are leaving if they wish to sign it. We'd like to get a moratorium put on this.
I just want to point out that the woodlot is safe. We have demonstrated numerous times in the last few years how we protect both woodlots and even individual trees that are considered sensitive, to the point of having even small woodlots gone through and every tree identified, marked, and determined what is significant, what is not significant, to such a degree that it gets involved in our plans of subdivision, etc. You have to replace a number of trees if they're going to come down. You have to go through all of those kinds of issues. Very in-depth work, but it's also been a lot of practice over the last few years as well that we can demonstrate over and over and over again.
Hi, I'm Rob Timmerman, live at 460 Gulf Road in the county of Brant. I just want to start off by saying I'm 100% agreement with this whole agreement. I'm a proponent for it. I believe that it's necessary for the growth of the economy in both the city and the county. I do have two questions. First question is, the properties that are on the trigger lands will be becoming part of the city from a taxation standpoint right away?
Mr. Moore?
Through you, they will remain, as previously discussed, they'll remain at the county base rate from this year, and then they will slowly increase with our annual budget increase. Again, there are instances where the tax rate will change. So if you sell the property to another individual, it'll change the tax rate to the city rate. And then once you receive approval of, say, a draft plan of subdivision or rezoning, the city rate will come in. So as long if you stay there and continue living there, you'll continue at the county base tax rate.
Okay, now I understand how that growth works. I was just wondering whether it was whether we were becoming part of the city from a taxation level right away.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question I have, a concern that I have, and I'm just wondering if it's been taken into consideration. We live in the northwest corner, and there are not a lot of existing residential homes in those areas, but there are. The area that we are in is now going to become industrial land. When we originally purchased the property, within the 13 years, that was part of residential development. And we took that into consideration and thought when we bought the property, now we have a property that is slated for future industrial growth. Our concern is, has anything been taken into account as far as property value goes? This is our homestead, this is our future, and we look at it now, and from a resale standpoint, we feel that we're taking a real hit.
I don't think that I'm qualified to be able to answer that one before you, but I think that's a good discussion. Like, we can sit down with you right after this and start having that discussion as well.
Okay.
Because it's also information that we'll want to know.
Right, right.
So if we can figure out a way of sharing and talking our way through that.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Charlene Nicholson. I'm the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Brantford, Brant, and I'm speaking on the organization's behalf. We have 740 member businesses as part of our organization. Those businesses are located in the County of Brant, the City of Brantford, and on Six Nations. We are here speaking in support of the Memorandum of Agreement as we have before. Our view is that we, from the beginning, have never commented on the specifics of the agreement. That is left up to the County of Brant, the City of Brantford, and the provincial government. Our concern is to meet the growth targets that have been set by the province of Ontario, both in terms of residential and perhaps even more importantly in terms of employment lands. It is essential for us to grow, to be a strong community, and I say community collectively, I mean all three communities. We urge you to take all the public input you've received. I think there has been more public consultation on this issue than there has on any issue in my memory. I think people have been heard. I think you have listened. And I really urge both councils to seriously consider this at your meetings tomorrow evening to support the Memorandum of Agreement. It's critical to all of our communities moving forward and succeeding. And I wish you well with that. And if any of the councillors have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Yeah, we've kind of skipped on that part, so.
That was a gentle reminder to you to keep doing that.
We're going to keep moving along. How about that one? Thank you. And actually, we'll end on that note. Good night, everybody. And anybody else? There was nobody else in line. Sure, come on down.
I think we need to step back and do our homework again. The province is evaluating places to grow. It's got the the coordinated land use policy review. And so they've just come out and said that you have to increase your growth from 40% of growth in cities to 60%. So cities need to grow up. That's what they're saying. So this is going to be legislation soon. They've announced their guidelines. And so it sort of feels like you are behind the times. You're rushing to do this old-style planning sprawl. And the province is saying, the province is not dictating, Mayor Eddy, with due respect. It is not telling you to grow, it's telling you to grow up. And so these are the new numbers. They've just come out. They came out May 10th. They've increased the density of cities. They've increased the density of any sprawl that you do. And so it means that the province is going to make you go back and do your homework. It's going to make you go back and do a new land needs study. So I think we're out of sync. I think that this is very developer-driven. Your last speaker, Chamber of Commerce, I believe, was Walton, not the former head of the Chamber of Commerce a year or two ago? No? Okay. Home builders. I apologize. Home builders. They were the head of home builders. No. Walton was
Okay,
not?
so if we could stop using
So
disparaging comments that are wrong.
Okay, but I'm asking you about the province, what they've announced May 10th. Are you working with those numbers? Are you looking at them? Because it's a different reality check. They're going to tell you to go back home and do your homework.
Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Mayor, those numbers are proposed.
Yes.
They have not been approved by the province. That number, that 60, again, that would be 60% new residential development within the built boundary. So we will apply that 60% if it's approved to our existing built boundary. The lands that we're talking about for expansion are needed lands for greenfield development. So they wouldn't be regulated by that 60%. There's a new proposed density target for greenfield lands of 80 people and jobs per hectare, which is an increase from 50. So there's two different density policies or calculations that apply through different areas of the city. So yes, we will use the 60 when it comes in, and we will plan to achieve that through official plan policy and update. And when we do the secondary planning for this area, if the 80 is approved, then we have to plan to achieve the 80 in the greenfield areas.
Okay, in following up on that, the Deputy Minister sent a letter to the city and the county in December and said, we're cautioning you with our new proposed guidelines, you may have to in fact de-designate. You won't need as much land, and you may have to de-designate land for growth. So it seems like we're on two different trains. One train is saying, let's eat it all up, and the other one, the province is not dictating. I challenge Mayor Eddy. They are not, in fact, they wrote the letter to Mayor Eddy and to council and said, and to Brantford, and they said, look, you may have to de-designate, you may have too much land. So I don't know if you're listening to each other, the province listening to the city and the county.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I would point out that the...
Hold on a second, Mr. Moore.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
Places to grow legislation is completely separate from the municipal affairs legislation dealing with boundary negotiations and boundary transfers. Different matters.
This was the
has to be dealt with by councils.
Maybe, Mr. Moore, you can answer that.
Yeah.
Sure. I was just going to say, I've never seen a letter from the province telling us to de-designate lands.
No, they were suggesting that you may have to. They were not telling you, they were suggesting.
I've never seen a letter
send it to you.
suggesting that we de-designate.
It's your letter, I'll send it back to you.
We have run out of lands. We have about a little over a 3-year supply of greenfield land. Our employment and commercial lands are at a dwindling supply as well. In order for us to meet the growth plan targets, we need these additional lands. As I said earlier, if the province changes those density targets, we will plan to achieve those density targets. But everything that we have done to this date are in accordance with the current growth plan regulations, and that's how we've built our numbers. Whether they came out a month ago proposing changes, as I said, we will adopt those changes when we need to make those changes through the secondary planning process.
Okay,
and municipal affairs staff have been informed of these discussions. In fact, PDF, their development facilitator, was involved in an earlier incarnation, but their staff have been informed and involved, and no concerns have been raised other than those that were expressed to us that bring us here this evening.
I believe the speaker behind me also has seen the letter. It's in your council package.
In all of the work that we've done, working on a daily basis with the individuals who are making municipal affairs decisions in this area, they are totally aware of what we're doing, and they're in agreement with what our numbers are and the agreement.
This is the Deputy Minister letter to you. Thank you. Or sorry, the Assistant Deputy Minister.
Hi, Vivian Wise, 29 Westlake Boulevard. My question is...
Towards you a little bit, just...
No.
Yeah, just turn up.
Okay. My question is, how did you determine the value of $850 per unit?
Mr. Moore, do you want to take a run at it?
That was a negotiated figure?
Okay. It doesn't look very good for the county to me when you consider the future value of taxation on all the land that's coming into the city. I know you're getting a portion of it for 10 years, but after that it stops.
The land that's being proposed to come into the city, particularly in the north, is not proposed to have any development done to it on the county's end of it. And the opportunities beyond the money for the taxation drop or the $850,000 was done as because we're not buying land. We're talking about moving a border.
Right.
And it's a compensation. And the reason that we did the declining tax amounts was so that the county didn't feel a huge hit immediately. We didn't have, we weren't going to feel a particular need from it. In the first number of years, you'll see a 10% decrease. It was meant for fairness for the county so that they weren't laying off staff immediately, they weren't having to sell trucks, they weren't having to do any of those things. It was designed over a 10-year process to allow them the opportunity to compensate for that work that's happening. We've also, a lot of this that's being spoken about from people is that we are at odds with each other, and yet the city and the county are in agreement on this on this item, and that we're working towards a common purpose, which is prosperity for everyone. So the prosperity that happens in Brantford's growth is not just going to benefit the people of Brantford, it's going to benefit the people of Brant as well, for those who are going to find jobs, etc., as we start to develop and that's the approach. Partners in Prosperity is the approach that we've taken this over the last couple of years. We've been very clear about that, and we've tried to find an agreement where we both benefited in different ways, but we both benefited and it was as fair as we could possibly make it.
I see. I'm not sure that everybody on council understands how that's worked out, and I don't feel they should be voting on that until they clearly understand every aspect of this deal. Really, a moratorium should be placed on this.
I've been doing this since 2003, and we've been negotiating it for the last 5 years, and members of council, both the previous one and this one, are aware of everything that's come along. I mean, other than typos and slight procedural things which aren't going to have an impact on the agreement, everybody's got all the information, and in fact, the last year or more, our process has been completely open, so the public are getting it at exactly the same time, almost, that other than the initial in-camera meeting, that council members are getting it. So it's a very open process.
So the public has gotten all the information that council has?
Pretty much now, yeah. I don't think, and in fact, the last in-camera meeting that we had, I think the stuff was on almost within minutes after we were out of the meeting.
Some of the areas seem rather vague, like not enough information given. Thank you.
You also have to understand that if you're talking about the agreement itself, it's still going to the province. The members of municipal affairs staff have been reviewing it on a regular basis. It's just been sent out to them again so that they are aware that this is happening over these 2 days. And they're going to review it to determine if there is anything that's not going to work. This is why we're here, because of the items that they identified out of the municipal agreement the first time. Those are the only 3 items that they had any concern about in our agreement. Sorry, Wolf, go ahead.
Wolf Hoogeveen, I'm a city resident. First off, I'd like to say I'm fully supportive of the agreement and the Memorandum of Understanding. And why I like it is, having grown up here, moved away and been back for almost 30 years, when I came back, there was a real parochial attitude and between different areas of the county and the city, et cetera, looking after their own best interests, looking after their own special interests, if I can use that phrase. When I see the council aligned here, and when I can see the consensus and the agreement, and certainly, and I use the word term loosely, but the wisdom that has been applied to this entire process for the entire time that it's gone on, Having been involved through the Home Builders Association and through working in both the city and the county, and I think a lot of that membership, and perhaps a lot of people here, think of this not as county city. This is our community. This is Brant, and this is for the good of Brant and Brantford. And I would defer to making a decision based on current policy, current statistics, etc. Deferrals, moratoriums, etc. We will have revisions to planning statutes, to all that sort of stuff from now till whenever. A decision, at some point you have to say, okay, this is what we're going to base our decision on. The decision that has been agreed upon is based on the statistics, policy, as Mr. Moore pointed out, that is current. If we put it off, sure, we're going to have more planning amendments coming up this year, next year, the year after. Where do you stop? In the meantime, we're stagnating. We have a small business in town where many and almost all of our customers that are in the residential construction business do not work in the city or in Brant County anymore because we do not have property that's available for them to develop. That means thousands of jobs, millions of tax dollars, etc. And not to put too fine a point on it, but some of the development that has occurred in the municipalities lately is the proponents of that are out of town companies where that money doesn't necessarily stay in our municipality, whereas our local people, it was mentioned earlier, the Home Builders Association, that membership has strong roots, and they live and they work and they buy and they pay taxes within the city and the county. And I think it's important that we see growth, and having been involved with the development charges, and I know both the city and the county, and I know there's contrary opinions, but growth does pay for growth. There may be some small initial investments by the municipality, but that is recouped 10, 100 times over in terms of the taxes and the money spent in the community. So again, just as a private citizen in the municipality, I encourage you to move forward and to ratify this. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Stop clapping. Feeds both sides. Anybody else? Okay, second time. Ladies first.
You go.
Oh no, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. That's the way it was brought up, though. I can't help it. I can't help it.
Hello, Ron and Mr. Friel. My name is Sandra Martin, and I live on the Power Line Road, 531, opposite the entrance to Northridge Golf Course. And what we always called the golf course lane is now Balmoral Drive. Now, as a farm family dating back to 1840, our family deed is that year. We have watched with interest the city grow. We have always been good neighbors, have worked with the people at Northridge in developing it, and our farm machinery has helped to do that as well. Most recently, I'm now known as Neighborhood Watch, with those who are involved with Northridge Golf Course, know of the vandalism that happens, and we have always been a neighbor that has worked with our neighbor, the city. I'm always interested in city politics, as well as the councilman to be representing us in this amalgamation. And I don't know whether any of our county people who will be in this amalgamation have followed who might be your representative and be made aware of that as well. When this is all said and done, will we as residents receive official information to tell us about the do's and the don'ts. Will the plow go up the power line as frequently as it has in the past? Police services, we have shared for many years, the OPP and the City of Brantford. Fire help jurisdiction, I'm not sure which year that happened, but say in the last 5. We have first service from the City of Brantford, and then the local volunteer departments take over. What can I say? I guess basically, will we receive something official so we can have guidelines as to what to do when there might be an issue? And also, the folks that don't know who our representative will be on council, that they be made aware of that person as well. I thank you for all your work. Ron, we certainly know what that's meant, and you, Mr. Friel. And again, I hope the people who are involved in this amalgamation property-wise do reflect on what has been accomplished, and that they in turn will be good citizens of the City of Brantford. Thank you.
I can tell you that the fire, because I remember that fire, that wasn't that long ago, well, it was a mutual aid, so we have an agreement with the county. In that situation, we were first on scene. And then the volunteer firefighters, because of our proximity, were able to be there. It wasn't long afterwards. We were able to manage it. But we have a mutual aid agreement that runs around the city, so that whether we're sharing tankers or equipment, whatever's necessary to deal with the emergency, the boundaries disappear, and it's just a matter of doing whatever we can to save life and property in that situation. In the case of policing, the work's already undergoing to review. We don't police the same way that you would in the case of fire, where you have halls and it's designated out. Police officers in our community-based policing system are on the road, so they can go into the police station and then they can go out and manage the road area. But there's dozens of agreements and things that we have to start to work our way through once the agreement's done. Right down to, we were having this discussion last week, Mr. Moore and I, talking about one of the things that came up is we've got to get this set for 911 too, in case there's a street within the area that's coming in that's named the same as the street in the City of Brantford. For 911, we've got to be able to get all of these things coordinated. There's a mechanism and a process in place, but there are so many different things that we already know, we've identified through other processes, etc., that we are working our way through. So when it comes time, and even before, we will certainly offer the opportunity. We can probably even have open houses for the new residents to come in and meet the people that we're going to be dealing with, some kind of package to give you an idea of what's going to happen. But you're not going to feel much change. You're still going to feel like you're living in the county, quite honestly.
Good.
Thank you very much. I'm Doug Crane. I live over on 22 Davern Road in Brant County right now. I would like it to stay that way, but I have to be honest about things. This looks like a bit of a fait accompli, I think, the way the councillors are sitting here tonight. But I would hope that all the councillors, if I might address them, could honestly vote not with their heart, not with their dollar, and I repeat, not with their dollar, but with their brain power and their knowledge of the whole situation when they make an agreement tomorrow night on this issue. The one question I would like to address is my taxes right now on my house on Davern Road are about $3,300 a year. Now, sorry, yeah. Can you hear me there now? Yeah. If I sell my house, what are my taxes? What am I going to tell the new owner that my taxes will be next year on that place?
Mr. Moore, Mr. Telford, do you want to explain the process? Mr. Bradley, Mr. Emerson? You guys haven't done anything. Poor Pat.
Well, if the property sells, the taxation goes immediately to the city's tax rate, which is approximately, and it was said before, 30% higher than the county rate.
Which is about how much now? I don't have a calculator with me.
What did you say your...
$3,300 right
It
now.
would probably add another $1,000 to it.
Right, okay. And that's going to deter the buyer, I'm sure. But I guess they'll have to accept that if they purchase the property and that sort of thing. My property value will definitely go down. I have farmland right behind my back fence, and if there's houses going in there with commotion and dust and all that sort of thing, it will definitely reduce my resale value of the house. Now, the other question I have is, what's the actual target that you have in mind for Brantford population in, say, 10 years? Do you have any ballpark figure as to where you'd like it to be?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I know that we've got the projected targets. We're at about 98,000 right now. You have to, 10 years, so can you think of 2027, Paul?
I think it's 136. I'd have to double check the growth plan. The growth plan gives us population projections up to 2041. I'd have to double check. I think it's around 136.
I see what you mean, yeah. I guess the concern I have with all this expansion and the pullback in the economy, which the Canadian economy doesn't seem to be really doing all that great. We'll build all these brand new houses, people will move into them, there'll be a surge of people moving to the brand new houses, some of them. The downtown area will in the housing now that's marginal, you might say, will now become more marginalized. And you basically starting to develop a downtown slum because you've built all these other places outside, which maybe you really don't need. And go ahead, sorry.
We did that in the 1960s, and now we're going the other way. So the concepts of going out of urban cores happened in the 60s with the development of suburbs. I mean, I was born and lived in Mayfair, so I felt part of that process.
Right.
And that's why you're seeing declines in downtowns right across North America. It's that shift. In our case, we started moving back in because of the campus environment. We have issues related to, there's density there, Paul. We have a whole bunch of other things in the downtown where we can probably have a better opportunity for density, so increasing housing either through high-rise, well, not high-rise because there's an 8-story limit, but the apartment buildings, et cetera. So there are those opportunities to develop. What it does do, and this is one of the things that we have to be conscious of, and one of the reasons we want to get on with planning, is you can see the southwest part of the city is, and they talk a lot about being isolated. We haven't done a good job at encouraging them to come across the river and into the city. And those, it is, part of it is the geography for it. But when we develop areas, particularly residentially in the north, Tula Heights already has its own culture. It'll continue to develop its own culture. But in the north, we're going to have to make sure that we don't create pockets or isolation, islands of development so that people are removed from the community. When we're developing, the idea is to try and draw in and use existing services, so transportation, the services that already exist, but give the opportunity for people to become engaged in the community as much as possible. And that's why we design neighborhoods the way that we're doing. That's why we're trying to work through a lot of those processes. There are some communities that are doing it very well. We'll follow those models too. But it is, you have to be very conscious of not pushing the population out and isolating that population now around the outside of the development area.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I guess the concern I have is, as cities develop and that sort of thing, look at Toronto now, the problem they have there with everything. As the cities get larger, more people, more congestion and that sort of thing, the problems arise. Look at London, look at Kitchener, Waterloo. All those cities now have major problems that they can't really deal with as far as policing. It goes on and on, unemployment. And I guess I have the suspicion that the underlying driving force behind this is the Home Builders Association. But after those houses are up, fine and dandy, you've got carpenters, electricians, plumbers employed for probably a couple of years, and then it's all over. It's gone. And so until the next development phase comes along from the province possibly, and then the cycle starts all over again.
I've been very open about the fact saying that this is going to be the opportunity to rebuild the home building industry in Brantford. Because right now, local builders are building in other communities because there is no developable land, or not a lot of developable land left in the city. So our builders are going out of town, and there's out-of-town builders coming here. When we get boundary adjustment, those opportunities increase, and we will literally rebuild the home building industry. And home building is not for the sake of, the job is not the sake of a house. Home builders are like any other manufacturing or industry. You get a skilled and qualified person, that skilled and qualified person you keep. And you keep them on as long as possible. I mean, I've listened to home builders complaining about trying to find electricians, trying to find plumbers, floor layers, whatever it's going to be, any of those kinds of things. But when you're talking about building till 2041, the way that we are, and all the growth that's going to go along with it, we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs that are going to be created, not just in that, but supplying the other industry businesses that are going to happen within the industrial area. We have to be able to grow to 79,000 jobs, I think it is, as well, and that is a huge number for us to be able to get there. And we have a good shot at being able to do it. We've been very successful the last few years, but the home building industry is, we've been absolutely open in the public consultations that's one of the, we want to rebuild our home building industry because that's where our jobs are, pay taxes, invest in the community, etc.
I think you're right, but it's basically a chase your tail effort. It's a chase your tail effort. It just keeps going round, round, round. And they'll be back again here in 5 years saying there's no jobs, the houses are all built, where are we going to go now?
Not in 5 years.
Oh, you'd be surprised how fast these houses will go up.
Well, they're not going to go that fast because it's going to take us 2 to 3 years to get the studies done before we're going to be able to allow any building to happen.
There will be a push on from the Home Builders Association to get that down to 16
I'm sure there would be.
months. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, the last question I have, Mayor Friel, and I'm just wondering if the vote goes tomorrow, and it might go like England, say it doesn't pass, what happens?
But if it doesn't pass?
If it doesn't pass.
I'm not even going to guess because I think it's, you have to remember, we've already passed this once. The only reason why we came back again is because the province asked us to make corrections in the agreement, which we've made. So we're passing basically the same agreement with just a little bit of addition in land, and then it goes to the province by the end of the week.
So you're saying if we had a straw vote tonight, it'd be all yes?
I wouldn't do that because this is committee of the whole, really, and there's no provision for voting on anything, so we're not doing a straw vote.
No, that's true.
But we're live on TV tomorrow. Well, we are.
I see, yeah.
You have to visit them.
Okay.
Tomorrow night.
Well, I would encourage the council members to really think this thing through very hard and fast, because I think there's some very underlying driving factors behind this. And the last question I was going to ask you, have you got anything in the wind as to what the Ontario government's proposing 10 years down the line? In 10 years? Because they've always got these 10-year plans now.
I don't know.
They're always hidden agendas.
There could be another government by then.
Well, yeah.
That's political guessing that I'm not.
That's quite true, yeah.
I'm not trying that one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next. Come on, Mr. Starkey.
Well, I hesitate to add to the list of what you've styled as typos, but I'm interested in 18.01, water and wastewater supply agreement servicing. And here you've referenced schedules F and G, an appropriate combination of letters. And I think what you don't mean proposed, I presume, I'm sorry for being presumptuous. I don't think you mean proposed reduced county ward boundaries or joint venture memorandum of understanding. I think you mean the maps of Cairnsville and the airport lands, and they would be schedules D and E, not F and G. I'm just saying that's all. But looking at that agreement, I'd like to understand this from the city's point of view. It looks to me as if the county has been given carte blanche as far as capacity goes for water and sewage in Cairnsville and sewage in the airport lands. And actually, not only is there no limit on the demands that they can put on the city's water treatment plant and sewage treatment plant, no limits at all, but section Roman numeral 6, the capacity allocated to the county will be given priority over all other developers. So, am I understanding properly that the county is within its rights when this, and doesn't it say that this aspect of the agreement is not subject to the approval of the annexation agreement? Is that not part of this wastewater, that this development takes place regardless of what happens to the annexation plant?
You're talking about the Canesville only, or because both of those areas that you're referencing are joint venture areas, both of which have to have agreements negotiated which haven't been negotiated.
But that's the joint venture agreement.
The details of which are not fully realized and had not planned to be fully realized until after the agreement.
So can I get clarification? Should those schedules quoted be the maps of the two districts, or should they be the proposed reduced county ward boundaries resulting from annexation and the joint venture memorandum of understanding? Which is it?
It should be D&E.
It should be D&E.
Yep, it's the joint venture maps.
Okay. No need to thank me for these corrections. So if you could indicate to me in this portion of the agreement where it indicates that the servicing agreement is subject to the joint venture memorandum. I read this and I didn't see this as being contingent upon any joint venture developments. I read this and it seemed to me, just, you know, as the yokel who came here on his bicycle tonight, that it seems that when this is signed, regardless of what the province agrees to, the county is fully, congratulations county representatives, is fully within its rights to pay for the piping, to get water and sewage to Canesville, and sewage to the airport lands. Is that right?
Can I ask one more time?
So they weren't actually listening to you because they were trying to find an answer.
Just because I'm a former councillor doesn't mean that you don't have to listen to me like you don't listen to the current councillors. Come on, staff. I know you refer to these guys as the part-time help, right?
It's not just staff, John.
So, my understanding is Section 18, Water and Wastewater Supply Agreement and Servicing, this is Part 3, other agreements between the parties which shall not form part of the formal restructuring order. So Section 18 is not contingent upon the province approving the annexation.
That's right.
Is that correct? Correct. Heads are going up and down. And the way I read it is, so when this is signed tomorrow, the county can start making plans for the development of the airport lands in Canesville, knowing full well that the city will supply water and sewage as required. The county is the front of the line before any other developer, because that's in there, and the county has no responsibility for any capacity issues that may be created to the city as a result of county demands for water and sewage, because they aren't articulated in the agreement.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the joint venture agreement is established such that there will be a joint venture study with the county and the city together and any other partners that may be deemed appropriate as part of this. There will be an analysis to determine what type of development could take place on that joint venture project land. and whether it would be viable, economically viable. And if it were deemed to be economically viable, then the city could choose to participate, and so could the county. Should the city choose not to participate because they don't believe it's economically viable, then the city, or the county could then proceed and develop it on their own with servicing from the city based on the city's design criteria. And that limits the capacity.
This section is referred to separately as the servicing agreement. There's nothing mentioned in the servicing agreement about joint venture. Nothing in your document. So I read them as being two separate additions that are proceeding along with the annexation. Because the servicing agreement doesn't talk at all about joint ventures. It just talks about benefits that are going to accrue to the county to get water and sewage so they can develop those lands, as long as they pay for the piping, the infrastructure to the common boundary. That's the way I read it. That is an undefined liability to the taxpayers of the city of Brantford, because you haven't put any limitation, any requirement on the county to contribute to the infrastructure of water and sewage treatment above and beyond what any taxpayer would pay as part of the rates. And I'd suggest that along with the $22 million in paid out funds to the county over 10 years, it was said that development will pay for these charges. I was part of the 1980 annexation. We probably have 1/3 of the land still along Shellard's Lane that hasn't been developed. And it took a long time for the city to realize any income from that development. So this $22 million and other costs, there's no money coming in right away to cover that. Development's not going to happen like that, is it? No?
3 years, but then again, this is 2016 and not 1980.
Every time I look in the mirror, I know that, Mr. Friel. Thank you for drawing that to my attention. I now understand. Thank you, Chris. I understand what's happened.
The rules change,
all of these
change,
46 years have happened.
Brantford was a very different city in 1980 than it is in 2016.
Yeah. And then there was 2008, right? Everything just goes according to plan. I would feel a lot more comfortable. I would feel a lot more comfortable about this plan if I saw among your mapping the Canadian land inventory classification maps, which talk about grades of farmland.
We have that.
Because
it was all made available before.
There's nothing up here.
I understand that in this room, but we've had them available.
Because even in Places to Grow 2005, it lists 5 priorities. And one of them is curb sprawl and protect farmland. And if you're going to get me in trouble. Come on, I do trouble well all
Actually,
by myself.
and I'm going to have to get you to wrap up in a minute because
okay, well, the question is...
this is your second 10-minute segment.
Yeah, I know. I know how old I am, and I can also count.
That's good. I'm just helping you along, chairing the meeting.
Thank
You
you.
remember how that worked.
Thank you. I'm not as dumb as I look, because nobody could be that stupid. Anyway, Places to Grow, curb sprawl, and protect farmland. Provincial policy statements go on and on and on about the requirement of municipalities planning growth to look at the categories of farmland.
We have done that.
Then why is the best value, the top of the quality land bordering the city, why is that category 1? Why is the best land being annexed, which means immediately farmland becomes urban land, when less productive land is being ignored?
That is not fully accurate, John. And I know that you might be looking at maps that have a very high detail. We get into maps that are actually much more specific in what the gradings are, and the work that's been done, the science that's been done around determining this area from aggregate resources, wellhead protection, continuity, a contiguous relationship with the city, etc. This item in a broad-based report with lots and lots of science in it and lots of maps identified this land as the land that was best suited for development for our purposes so that we have best access, but also because it had the lowest scores in quality, well, land, aquifers, all of the other issues that relate to it. That report, the Hemson report, the subsequent reports that have been done, our reviews, the mapping, all of this information has been made available over a very long period of time.
I can only rely on hearsay and the fact that my dad was a farmer. And I know that in the north end of Brantford, there is considerable amounts of land that are capable of market garden farming, which is per square foot the most valuable farming that can be accomplished.
Sure.
And to the south end of the city, because we lived in West Brant, and my dad, God bless him, managed to dig in clay. And he loved it when he made it to Oakland because sandy loam and you can dig 3 feet down with your hands.
I realize.
So what I'm asking,
getting all folksy and stuff.
Oh gosh, you bring it out in people, Chris. What I'd like to see, because quite frankly, I don't think we have all the detail. People have talked about this being a done deal. And what I would like to know is what's missing from all these maps is I would like to see property ownership maps. Because I would like to see what sort of land assembly has taken place, anticipating development, and whether that assemblage of land has actually influenced where the boundaries are being set. And only maps would dissuade me of that suspicion. Only maps would do that, because otherwise I smell a rat. And I think both councils are doing a disservice to planning when they ignore the priorities of places to grow, and when they don't reference provincial policy statements, which are intricately and infinitely specific about preserving farmland. Because there's no point in having a lovely house if you don't have food.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Come on down.
Forgive me if this question's been asked. I'm late to the meeting. And John, to answer your question, I live on the block that is predominantly all owned by private farmers and landowners. And to my land at the corner of Gulf and Governor's Road, it's damn good farmland. Question, county, if and when you vote on this tomorrow, have you put any caveat in to say to the city, go away for 100 years? Have you set a timeline when the city can come back and start this process all over again?
So the question is, to be clear, you are asking me to advise you of the reason?
No. I'm asking anyone on the county council, if you sign the agreement tomorrow,
Yes.
is there a caveat that you are telling the city not to come back and ask for land for a specific period of time? Have you thought of that?
Sorry, some of this is actually controlled by the province as well, because
And that was going to be my question. Do you have any say, A, and B, if you do?
we do. Mr. Moore might be able to. We have to have
we can say it.
A certain amount of land, both industrial and residential, always ready to go. So I'm not sure what the years are, and that's one of the reasons the trigger land works the way that it does in our official plan, where 80% built out trigger lands come in. So it's based on the same kind of concept. So we would hit it at, and we've actually calculated in some degrees, like you would have to have it this number of years ahead of 2041. done this for 13 years, so I'm going to say this. We are condemning another council in probably early 2030 to start the process again. And having been through it, it is condemning. Am I accurate, Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I was just going to add, when we initially did the trigger mechanism, we worked it out that we based it on provincial policy. So the provincial policy says that you have to have a short-term supply of land equal to a 3-year. So that in that 3 years, you have to have land that's ready to build on. And then your long-term forecast is a 10-year. So the way the triggering mechanism was set up was that we would build it, or it would build out till you hit 80%, which equated to that 3-year supply left over. So this plan is just a 2041, but you know, to hit that 80%, we're only going to have a 3-year supply left at that time.
And did the county have to build a plan out exactly the same, where they had to have land available 3 years out and 30 years down the road? And do you have enough land left in the county to meet that?
They got all the land. That's what this is all about. Mr. Moore? It's late. I'm getting goofy.
All municipalities are subject to those requirements, so the county would have to look at their inventory of land as well and make sure they're meeting those targets.
Anybody else?
Believe it or not, I've thought of this point, of course, but it's as simple as this. We can take it back to county council. They could decide to pass a resolution. They couldn't pass a bylaw. There's no legislation for it. And what wouldn't be worth the paper it's written on, as a matter of fact. And it's just not the way the province works. Municipalities are creatures of the province. Practically everything we do, there's an act or a section of an act. It's quoted on every bylaw, most resolutions, over and over and over. That's a fact of municipal life. It absolutely is. And we really, on occasion, have the privilege to deal with federal acts too. But what we do as municipal councils is subject to being allowed to do it by the province of Ontario. And the reason County Council has stepped up to this, it's as simple as that. You won't agree with it, not likely. Maybe no one will. The reason we're doing this is to save a county. Thank you.
Okay, that's not going to open up a whole new discussion, just so, still staying on restructuring. Come on down.
Yes, sir.
John Novak, West Street, Brantford. I understand all the constraints and rules that are being put upon both of you from the province, but I'm confused about one thing I've heard several times tonight from several sources, and that's the talk about the phenomenal new construction and home building that's going to occur as a result of this boundary change. All this pent-up demand to build new houses, all these companies that can't provide that in Brantford because there's no land. But I'm not seeing all that construction occurring on the county land that we're talking about taking over. So my confusion and my question is, what's Brantford doing differently? What's Brantford giving the developers that the county isn't, that all of a sudden they're now going to build these new properties on land that already exists? What's different? What won't the county let them do that Brant's going to let them do?
It's not that at all. It's a completely different, we're two very different municipal forms. We're a condensed urban form at 98,000. County's a rural form with small towns, villages, and 36,000 people. Completely different scenarios. So you see the development that we're seeing in the Southwest, and what we're seeing a lot of is people who are coming out of condensed form in GTHA West, moving to condensed form in Brantford here, a lot cheaper and in a much nicer setting than where they're going to. The development that I'm seeing in the county is larger estate lots, lower density in a lot of cases, and servicing done in a different way. So There's not necessarily sewer, water in the same, I know some is, but some is, I'm trying not to generalize. So you have two completely different forms, and it's very common to look at it in that way. I don't know, well, they're not listening. But we develop the land. In the case of Southwest, Empire Homes bought it. Case of the North, it is individually owned for the most part. The farmers still own the land. It's going to have to be purchased, but it'll come into a condensed urban form, just like the rest of the area, other than perhaps, and I still say this and I'll say it again, the Tula Heights area, which I still think becomes estate homes, and we just density more in the north. But they always hate when I say that, but I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's a good idea. But in the north, when we go through it, we're going to have an urban condensed form like we see in most of Brantford. So it's a completely different setup. You can build more houses at the same time. You have more opportunity to buy larger parcels of land. You can develop larger subdivision units within our form, etc. So there's a whole series of reasons why it happens. It's not a matter of what we give or don't give, because we don't own the land, and quite honestly, when either industrial or residential come in, once the land has been worked out, we don't own it. It's all they do is pay us. So it's development charges, other fees, etc. that come through it. So it's not a matter of us attracting by doing anything, just two completely different forms, which actually complement each other, and is something that we should be doing more of, because what we can't always do, because our condensed form and for densities is going to hit us harder than it'll hit into the county. They can do things and offer a degree of housing that we can't, and we benefit from us being their city and they being our rural belt.
So what prevents the county from doing the same thing now?
You could get, in some cases, you could do it in areas, I think St. George is developing, not fully condensed form, but it's pretty dense, I believe. Paris has done the same kind of thing. But you're talking about a community of 98,000 to a community of 13,000, or what's the population of St. George? 2? 3? 3,000 people. Completely different creatures.
There's still something that just, it just doesn't pass the sniff test.
Absolutely it does. No, I'm sorry. There's been a couple comments that have been made, like we're doing something wrong, or that there's some form of sniff test and other comments. Don't just throw that stuff out there. And unless you've got evidence to support it, don't just throw that out there, because that's a serious thing to say. So this is urban form that we're talking about, and rural form. There's volumes of books written on this. There are courses taught on it. We're not inventing this. It is an actual practical application of how communities grow in different forms. And what the county does on Rest Acres Road, we could never get away with, because the province treats us differently as a condensed urban form. We'd never be allowed to do that in that form. We have to have capacity in our water sewer. We have to do all of these things in an urban form. And I know that you do too, sorry. And I try not to offend anybody. But it's a completely different scenario for us. And it's not one that the county, and in the future, is going to have to, immediate future, is going to have to deal with. So it passes the sniff test. It's just the way it is with cities and towns and villages and rural versus urban, everywhere.
Yeah, I still find it hard to believe that the county wouldn't be interested in all of that coming in to all that tax revenue, all of that coming into the county.
I'm sure they would love to do it, but they don't have the services to be able to make it work either.
Oh well.
Laurel Harrison, Brant School Road, Brant County. I came to the meeting a little late, so I would, if you don't mind clarifying. This is going to be signed, this proposal between the two of you, or the agreement, will be signed tomorrow. And at that point, then it goes to the Minister of the Municipal Affairs, is that correct?
Yes.
And then he can say yay or nay to it. Is that correct?
Signs it, but we've had it in the minister's office and with municipal staff and have already made corrections based on their requests. So
Right.
that's what this consultation is what's come back from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to ask us to make these fixes, which is why we're here this evening.
Is that the previous minister or the new minister?
Previous minister.
Okay, so you're going to be dealing with the new minister
And we've
then?
already been in communication and contact with the minister. The minister's already been briefed, is aware of the file, and is prepared to move forward.
Okay, so nobody expected Brexit to go through, so, well, there you go. So, but in the case that the minister says no to it, then what happens?
Just don't even think that's going to happen now.
Well,
I'm not even going to, it's not going to happen.
still, as a citizen, I think we'd probably entitled to know what the next move would be. Does this get put aside, or
No,
do
we
you go back to the table?
If the minister says no,
Yes.
then we find out why the minister said no, and we make whatever corrections are necessary, and then we go back and we do it again.
Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Hi, Mayors. Keith Fair, 163 Powerline Road. Just have a question about how the tax is going to work. I've just been recently included in this. So right now, if my house is assessed at $200,000 at the county, right? When I'm involved in the city, when I join the city, does my house get reassessed?
We're all getting reassessed. Where's Mr. Telfer again?
But then,
Come on up here, Mr. Telfer. You're going to end up explaining this. We're all about to. Is it this year or is this year that everybody's getting reassessed? And in this scenario, what we're doing right now won't have an immediate impact because we went through that. It's not to say that. We can't figure impact out either. So.
But my question is, I have an acre and a half of land, so assessed at county rate now, but at city rate, it would be assessed at quite a bit more value-wise, wouldn't it? Which means the taxes on it would be substantially higher?
I'm not an assessor, and I don't work for MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, but it's my understanding that they won't change the way they assess the properties just because the boundary changes. So every property in the province is going through reassessment in 2016. Everybody will get a new assessment notice this year, and if the assessment goes up, it's being phased in for 4 years. This is the third time they've done this assessment cycle. But it's my understanding that just because of the boundary negotiations, it won't affect the value or how they assess the value.
But I'll be assessed at city...
You'll be taxed at city taxes while it'll be phased in.
Yes, but the value of the land, if I had an acre and a half of land in the city, it would be valued at more than an acre and a half of land in the country, would it not?
I can't say that for sure. It's my understanding that it wouldn't be. We've assessed the same value.
But it's a valid question. And
because
we'll find out more specifically what their thinking is, not just on this one, but what over the longer term, like the next few years would be, whether we would see a shift in their thinking, and then we can make sure that everybody understands that.
Okay, but if I was to sell my property this year, the new owner would have county tax rates for 15 years with increments at the city rate until the 16th year, and then it obviously gets reassessed. And
well, it won't be reassessed. MPAC's separate from us. They do it on a different course. And over the course of that 15 years, we'll work out a phase-in so that we're not going to say to everybody, hey, your taxes just went up $1,000 this year. It'll be, we're easing this in for you over this period of time.
Okay, but if I sell the house after this deal goes through, then it's instant, is it not?
It's instantly into the city.
So to the new owner, that could be $1,000 to $3,000.
Depending, I don't know what your property is, but yep.
So that's a question that can't be answered till the time comes, kind of deal.
Well, January 1, 2017, if it's passed, if you sell your home on January 2nd to the new person, their taxes will be at the city rate.
Well, sorry I missed that.
So
that's right.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
If the property sells after January 1st, 2017, for 2018, because we will have already been at 2017, it would go automatically to the full city rate, which is 30% higher.
Yes, but 30% higher based on what I'm taxed, my value now, or 30% on what impact values the home and the property at as being in the city versus the county. So it could be substantially higher than 30%.
Maybe I can get you to have this conversation afterwards.
Okay.
So
okay, no, that's
Pat, he's number one.
Okay.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Just real quick, going back to what he was talking about, if the Impaka is doing everybody's houses in 2016, prior to the boundary change, are the appraisal on my house for my taxes purposes going to be for 2016 while I'm still in the township?
Yes. I mean, your assessment done this year will be your assessed value going forward for the next
And
4.
if they do not happen to knock on my door in 2016 because they're overworked, overlogged, or whatever,
they don't knock
and they
anymore.
do it in 2017, do I then get my house appraised because I'm in the city value or the township value?
What Mr. Telfer was saying is if you own a farm in the township, for example, it comes into the city, you're not going to change the value or the assessed value of your home. That's not going to make a difference. If you're got a developable piece of property that got roads and curbs and sewers in it that comes into the city right afterwards, you're going to have an issue with that.
No,
But
I'm
your
trying
individual
to lock in what happens with Impaka. Okay, because the Impaka, Impella, whatever. When they come and assess my property in 2016, I'm still in the city because you're saying we're not going through until 2017, right?
Yep.
And my house will be valued in the township value.
2016.
What they figure my house would sell for, right? As being in township property.
I think Mr. Telfer said it's not going to make any difference when it comes into the city, according to what MPAC's saying.
I don't believe that.
But we can get you,
when you're in the city, your property is assessed differently. It's not the same. So what I'm saying, this is already, what month is it? Sorry.
June.
June. This is already June. I haven't heard from them. They haven't left anything at my door.
They just showed up to Finance Committee last week.
Oh, so they're going to do everybody from June to December 2016?
This is an aside, and we should get you to sit and talk to Pat specifically about what your property issue is. We can deal with that.
Because I can see it being two different values depending on when they knock on my door.
Its impact and assessment's not going to be the way that it used to be, and you need to be really aware of it when your assessment notice comes in. You need to look it through and make determinations, and you need to be able to be prepared to
It's a long battle if you want to fight them. I know that.
You got to challenge them.
It's really challenging for the ordinary person without any statistics and access to statistics.
Yeah,
Because
I know.
I've done it, and it's really difficult. I won, but it's difficult.
Yeah. So you can talk to Mr. Telfer, and he'll stay late.
Just so everybody knows, MPAC, they've already done all the residential properties for the next cycle. It's done. Notices are ready to go in the mail. I think they're being affected by the postal
This is
strike.
why you're gonna
So in July, you will get your notice for residential and farm properties, I believe, but definitely for residential. You will get your notice for the next 4-year cycle. So if nothing changes with your property, that will be your assessment for the next 4 years. Non-residential properties, business, commercial, industrial, are still to be done in the fall.
Okay, next.
Once again, it's Sue Draper, and I've actually got two hats. My second hat and the other one that I'm actually coming before you with now is I've been in contact and been asked to speak specifically because I'm an advocate as well with some of the traditional people on the Six Nations territory. And I've been asked specifically to remind you and your council of a specific case called
We're not
Louis
the
versus
council.
Louis, and also of Williams 2014, both of which specifically indicate that elected council was designed and implemented in 1924 by the Canadian government and was noted by the Supreme Court 2 years ago as an administrative arm of the Canadian government. Under the Indian Act, elected council may not negotiate for land rights or treaty rights. So I've been asked specifically by traditional peoples to remind the respected councillors that while you have said that you've met with elected council, and I do understand, Mayor Friel, that you will probably tell me that that's who's recognized, but I can also tell you that at the federal level, both the traditional council and the elected council are negotiated with, but that I believe if you check with the Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs, you'll find that consultation has not been done. Additionally, I would like to ask your council or ask...
That's actually the staff. The councillors are getting a little...
I'm sorry?
That's the staff. Council's up here.
No, council SEL as opposed to
Oh,
council CIL.
actually, he's not even here.
Yes, no, you indicated to me that your legal counsel is here.
No lawyers.
I thought you told me the gentleman who was helping to interpret the Municipal Act.
He's the
I
general
believe I
manager
thought
of
you told
planning.
me that he was a lawyer,
No, he's the general manager of planning.
general manager of planning.
I said our lawyer isn't here because he's just had surgery, he can't speak.
Yes, but prior to that, I had asked you about some interpretation of the
I'm not
Municipal
sure,
Act.
I must have misspoken, but Mr. Moore is not a lawyer.
All right, so
I think
having
he
a-
actually said that I'm not a lawyer at one point.
Right, okay, then having established that, I'd like to point out to your respective staff and also to both councils.
Well, then, so-
I would like to ask you then, what steps have you taken to address the fact that many of the properties that are currently under negotiation are currently under active litigation with the federal government? And because they are an active court case, the transfer cannot just automatically happen.
Yes,
And even if the transfer does happen, you cannot change any of the zoning or purpose or use of those lands
Yes,
until
we
such time,
Yes, we can.
with all due respect, Your Worship, you don't have legal counsel here to ask you.
I've also been doing this for 22 years. So what you're talking about...
Mr. Mayor, can I make one comment here? And that is that if you and I are going to go toe-to-toe on this, I really don't think your 22 years is something we want to get into at this point. You asked earlier to discuss statistics. You asked earlier to discuss legislation. That's what I'm here to do. I have reviewed it extensively. I've worked with Aboriginal Affairs. I've worked with the Ministry of Aboriginal Affairs. And you yourself...
So I used to work for them.
Excellent. So
Yes.
you know exactly what I'm speaking
So I
of.
know exactly what you're talking about. So what I'm referencing
So you can
is
explain to me how
land
you've done
rights
this?
and land claims are not an issue in boundary adjustment. This is a discussion around moving a border, not ownership of land.
That was not
So
what I
this
asked.
is governance, not ownership. This has been done. Actually, this has been done, you can even go find court cases around this, but it's been done. So we are also not the Crown. It's the federal or provincial governments that are designated as the Crown. In fact, they insist we're not the Crown, and they want to keep it that way so that we are not negotiating. What we're negotiating is moving a border for governance, not for land claims. It doesn't enter into these discussions. We've been up and lobbied to the federal government, to the provincial government, federal government twice, spoken with the ministers, gone through all of this. It doesn't show up.
You
It
haven't
doesn't,
answered
it's
my
not going to do it
question.
here, it's not doing it anywhere.
I was not
In fact,
discussing
in
land
the
claim.
agreement, we specifically state anything that we've done in no way impacts or infringes on land claims, land rights.
I'm not discussing land claims or land rights.
That's
What I'm
what you
simply
said.
saying is that you have a property which is currently involved in an active litigation.
Yes.
Because it is an active litigation, you are not able to make any changes to the zoning or purposes or land uses. I would like to know how the council is going to address that.
You're going to have to show me that because that doesn't apply anywhere in Canada. Seriously.
I'm free tomorrow morning.
Well, I'm not, but it's a job thing. But I'm more than willing to talk to you about this in depth.
All right.
I got
The
no
other thing,
problem with it.
I do have to just correct you on one thing, and that is that there is a thing called the Crown Corporations Act, which specifically says that if you're created under the Municipal Act or under an act of legislation specifically to do with the Lieutenant Governor, such as a municipality is under the Municipal Act, you are then a Crown Corporation. That's all I'm going to say on that one.
There's a completely different thing from Crown Corporation to the Crown in land rights, night and day, legally.
Also not talking about land rights, talking about whether or not...
It's all about land is what we're talking about. Completely different, night
What
and
I
day.
would also
Crown
like to
Corporation.
say, I've asked my legal questions about that. I've also brought to your attention the fact, as you know, that the Six Nations Council and Six Nations traditional people don't believe that they've been consulted with. And I believe there's also a letter on file for you from Lonnie Bomberry's Director of Lands and Resources, which specifically remarks, as it did for the Hardy Road, that they do not believe they have been consulted. Speaking of Hardy Road, one of the things that you've mentioned is that there's an anticipated $400,000 transfer in anticipation of being able to develop the industrial properties at the Sharp industrial lands.
That's not in,
I believe that,
that's not in play in the MOU anymore.
I believe it's in your package that you had.
That might have been the old
handed out.
agreement, but it's not. There's only 2 compensation issues, but there isn't a dollar payment for Sharp Road anymore. That was the last agreement.
So that's no longer on the table?
Not,
All right.
We're not paying you guys for Sharp Road, not that I remember. That was 2 or 3 years ago. No?
Well, that's a bit of a relief, because I know that the last time you tangled down there, it cost you about $2 million. What I would like to know, though, and I asked both councils, both the Rural Council and also the Municipal Council and Urban Council, I had the good fortune to speak or to listen to Dr. Wayne Caldwell, who is a professor at the University of Guelph and specializes in farmland and preservation of land and the use of agricultural lands. And he noted that the United Nations stated that 81% of the world, before the year 2030, 81% of the world will be considered urban. And that currently 4% of the population, total population of the country, feeds the country and is responsible for 42% of the gross domestic product. Additionally, 1.3% of that is found in Southern Ontario. Of that 1.3% that is found in Southern Ontario, the majority of Class 1 and Class 2 agricultural lands are found here. They're found in the Golden Horseshoe and in Southern Ontario. When you go and consider not just the boundary change, because we've all read, I don't know if we've all read it, but most of us have read the implications and can understand, and we've understand also when we talk about servicing, we're not talking about properties that are there already. We've talked about jobs, we've talked about construction, we've talked about residential and urban homes. What I'm asking is that when you consider this proposal before you, and you consider growth, and you consider economic viability, and you consider the impact on a community, you also consider that if we only constitute 1.3% of the population and we're making 42% of the gross domestic product, this decision that you're making takes away so much farmland. What kind of a national impact is that going to have? Additionally, with all due respect to His Worship, he made a comment earlier about something not going folksy. And I have to point out that you're in a community meeting here, and we're bringing forward our concerns to you about the community that we live in, the community we've chosen to live in, the area we've chosen to live in, whether that's an urban house, whether that's a rural property, whether it's been handed down through generations, as several of the farms have been, whether that's a house and a new Canadian who's just moved in last year. We are all here because we have those concerns. And most of us are here not because we're worried about what all the nitty-gritty is and all the legal stuff is. And even if you ask people, it's probably not just about the taxes. It's about how is this big business, how is this industry, how is this corporate entity known as the municipality and the municipality, how are they going to impact us personally? Because at the end of the day, this is personal. It's not business. This is personal, and you're affecting families and futures and lives.
Sorry, I'm going to have to see if there's anybody else because we're timing.
I don't mean to filibuster, but I don't see anyone.
Well, you are. So I didn't want to call you folksy because I didn't think that would go well.
You didn't call me folksy.
No, I didn't want to. Anybody wish to make a comment? Just, okay. So you got a couple more minutes and then we can adjourn the meeting.
The other thing that I'll close with, since you're quite eager to see the back of me, is Dr. Caldwell provided a couple of really interesting statistics, other than the 1.3%. And one is, it relates specifically to, we're talking about prosperity here, right? Partners in prosperity, and how this is going to pay for itself, and whether or not it's going to pay for itself, and how we as a community are going to benefit. And they've done a cost analysis, and they've actually done it worldwide. And the statistic that he left us with is that $1 of agricultural tax money between agricultural uses and all the industry that comes from it, from the guys that order the pizza and service your John Deere, right to the guy that puts the seeds in the ground, $1 of your tax money consumes 30 cents of that dollar. So you have 70 cents as a profit. When you have the same tax dollar put towards residential uses, that tax dollar is insufficient and actually ends up costing $1.20. I believe that's significant. So I'd like to thank your worship. I'd like to thank people here. And I think I would ask, certainly from the people that I represent, and also certainly from the people that I've spoken with here, please, both councils, consider this extremely carefully. This isn't just a business thing. And it's not just about the Places to Grow Act. And it's not just about how many houses you can put in. It's about, what are your grandchildren going to have? What are we going to have? And how are we going to pass that on? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. There are still the opportunity for our staff who are still here, and I can do this. We can do this because we're mayors, so you can grab them and talk to them for as long as you like. They're all along that row over there, depending on who you want. Thank you for coming. I'd like to thank those who organized the meeting and got it together. Thank you for members of council. Thank you to everybody who spoke this evening, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.